Welcome, folks, for our last STU meeting of the year. For those that don't know me, I am Anna Holder. I am an environmental scientist at the California Water Boards and your Safety at Work Group co-chair, here along with Jay Davis. And we're all Zoom pros, but today we're really here to listen, and I'm here to listen and hear feedback from regional board partners on their bioaccumulation monitoring priorities over the next coming years. So I'm going to ask for folks to hold questions until the end of their respective presentations or add them to the chat. But when that time comes, if those presenters would like to open for questions and discussion, feel free to raise your hand. Again, use the chat, use your reactions. And just a reminder, as you've already received a notification, we are recording this meeting and I'm going to try and get it posted today or early tomorrow so folks can just revel in the presentations sooner rather than later. And before we dive into today's agenda, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge tribal lands in California and express my deep gratitude for all of the close to 200 tribes that are in our beautiful state. The Cali PA building and the hub of this work group is located in a place we now call Sacramento, California. And Sacramento was and still is a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and foothills since time immemorial and are the original stewards of these lands and waters. These people include the Nishinan, Maidu, and Miwok peoples and the Putwin and Wintun nations who have remained committed to the stewardship of these lands and waters over many centuries. And it's important for me to acknowledge that these are just words. And actions are more important. And it's important for us to recognize that our organization sits on the lands of Indigenous peoples and that we're all here because of the sacrifices that have been forced upon them. And in acknowledging and remembering these communities and all of the work we do, and particularly as we're thinking about priorities and how we monitor equitably moving forward, I hope to honor their legacies, their lives, and their descendants. So with that, let's see who is in the room today. We'll start with a roll call. Feel free to unmute, test your audio, say hello, turn on your video if you want to test that too, if you're brave, and we'll get moving. So peer review panel.
Harry Ollendorf here.
Hi, Harry. Welcome. USCPA? OEHA?
Hey, Anna, Wes Smith here.
Hey, Wes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna. Tran Pham here.
Hey, Tran. Okay, Moss Landing, there's a couple of you, so I'll let you see who goes first.
Autumn Bonema.
Billy Jekyll.
Scott Lucas.
Welcome. Regional boards, let's start with Region 9.
Backwards, I like it. Chad
Yeah.
Laughlin.
And Carrie Shearer.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi.
Debbie Woodward.
Hey, Debbie. Yeah, y'all are left for last. It's time for you to go first. Okay, Region 8.
This is Heather. Hi.
Hey, Heather, welcome.
Jason Freshwater.
Hey, Jason, good to see you. 7. 6.
We've got 3 of us here. This is Lori Screeb.
Hi, Kelly Huck here.
Elena Mystico.
Hi, Elena.
4 of us, Dan Sussman.
Nice. It's a party. 5. Region 4.
Hi, Emily Duncan here.
Hey, Emily.
Hi.
Region 3. Region 2.
Hey, good morning. Gerardo Martinez here.
Hey, Gerardo, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Region 1. Okay, State Board. I don't see a ton of folks, so just go for it.
Tessa Fojit from Swamp IQ.
Hey, Tessa. Yeah, I can see more of you and there's registration, so I understand if you're shy. Monitoring Council, including the other Stu co-chair.
Jay Davis, SFEI.
Awesome.
Thought you might forget me.
Never. Is there anyone else that I missed that they want to say hi?
Hi, good morning. I joined a minute late. Lori Temney from OEHA.
Welcome, Lori. Thanks for joining.
And
Awesome.
Jennifer Salisbury is on as well.
Yeah, I see Jennifer and Candace are saying hello in the chat. Welcome, y'all. All right, so today I'm going to give a super brief overview and kind of grounding of why we're here, who we're going to hear from today, and where we're going, just for context. And then I'm going to hand it over to our regional board partners who are going to share their priorities over the next years. And so I'll stop sharing. They can share their screen and talk or whatever you want to do. We give you about 20 minutes. I will keep time and chime in if we're getting close to going over. And then we'll wrap up and prepare for next time. So,
And a question on the agenda.
yeah.
On the invite, we blocked out 3 hours. If people are really on a roll, can we let the discussion go longer than you've laid out here? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like to respect our presenters' time and commitment. So I don't want to go too long, but maybe we can circle back. And for those that want to stay longer, we can. Yeah, but the goal is to block the 3 hours and then not use it. But yeah, if we're on a roll and people just can't stop, won't stop, then we will we'll keep chatting.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So a lot of y'all are here because we've been talking about this long-term monitoring priorities assessment process for quite some time. And as a reminder, the goal of this process for me is to hear from you about what your priorities are over the coming years and how the bioaccumulation monitoring program and safety work group can partner, support, and how we can leverage our collective efforts to make the resources that we have go farther. And so for me, big picture, I want to get a better understanding of the long-term monitoring and analysis needs and priorities so that we can make a long-term strategy for the bioaccumulation monitoring program and the safety work group, and then have a more clear understanding of the next 5 years and be able to create monitoring plans and submit permits for 2025 and be very close to that point for 2026. Today's presenters were asked to complete a template that includes the sections that are on the slide. We're going to be hearing from the region 9, 6, and 4. I think I get the numbers wrong all the time. And that's where the little stars are on the map. They might have slides. They might pull up their template. They might just chat and kind of use their time to riff off of the template that they've already completed. After the meeting, I'll be merging the templates and adding them to the notes document. So they will be made available shortly. And then at the end of this process, after we've heard from our regional board partners and tribal governments and agency partners and other organizations, there will be a main document with all of the resources that everyone has shared with us. So we're hearing from 3 regions today, but just looking ahead, we're going to hear from everyone else in January. So that will be a full 3-hour meeting with no time for extra time. It's going to be jam-packed. The agenda is already posted. It looks a lot like today's, except for it has the additional regions. And then looking ahead at the end of January, we're going to start here from our tribal government, agency, and community-based organization partners. The registration link is already up. If you are a representative of a tribal government, another California state agency, or community-based organization, and you'd like to give your voice to this conversation at a future meeting, please let me know your interest by January 1st, so that we can make sure to get you on an agenda that fits best with your schedule. If presenting doesn't resonate with you, but you still want to provide feedback, there's this survey that's available that we're asking folks to complete by March 1st. There are 10 questions, 4 are required, and then the others are really there to enable folks to provide more detail and context at whatever level of comfort works for them. And here is a view of the 4 required questions. They're
Anna?
all, yeah.
Sorry, are you sharing your like some slides right now? Am I the only one not seeing them?
Oh, I am.
I see them.
I'm seeing them.
I see
Okay.
them.
Well, thank you. I'll see what's wrong on my side. Thank you.
Sorry, Daniel. Thanks for
Yeah.
flagging that though.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry.
Right. You just had to say something and then it got fixed, right? So the 4 required questions are multiple choice. And if you don't have a ton of time, it would potentially take less than 5 minutes to complete. But again, there's the additional questions after the bottom 3 bullets on this slide that enable folks to add more details if they'd like. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and hand it off to Chad, who's going to tell us about the San Diego region's priorities. Take it away.
All right. Thank you, Anna. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if I can show everybody how I'm not an actual pro at Zoom. All right. Let me know if you can see it.
It looks great.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a question from Harry.
Sure.
I was just wondering about the list of regions lined up for January.
Mhm.
I didn't see Region 4. Is there a Region 4 to be presenting also?
You don't have to wait till January. They're presenting today.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'm Chad Laughlin. I am a senior environmental scientist with the San Diego Regional Board, and I oversee our monitoring, assessment, and research unit. And I got 2 of my staff are listening in today. I actually am going to have to cut out for a mandatory senior meeting after I present, but I'll be back as soon as I can, and they'll be on the line too to chime in or help answer questions, listen to the other presentations. So as Anna showed, San Diego region is in the southwest corner of the state. And so we're a smaller region, but we've got a lot of activity. So today I'm going to talk about kind of our priorities and a little history too. All right, so quick outline. I'm going to talk about our history of involvement in the bog and stew. Just mention some recent sampling efforts. Talk about our regional priorities, our wish list, as if you will. Specifically talking about sites, species, also pollutants and methods, and what we view as our next steps. So for history, I've been personally involved in what was the bog and now is the stew for, I actually looked back, it's been 10 years, which is crazy. And unfortunately for those 10 years, the funding has been pretty much the same. And that funding was vastly, the program was vastly underfunded at the very beginning, even 10 years ago. So I put a little kind of note in here if you want to read the important stuff. Back in 2010, just for recreational value for recreational fishing in the state, the value estimate ranged from 342 million to 2 billion annually. And so I can't remember what the actual stew budget is in terms of percentages for that. Didn't have time to look up the numbers, but it hasn't changed. So, from our perspective, we've been using our swamp funds and some of our non-swamp funds to essentially supplement the bog and the stew where we can for what's important over the years. So I just I want to be upfront and very clear when I'm talking about priorities and in my next couple of slides, what the stew does and doesn't do. Please don't view it as some sort of crazy criticism of what has been done to date, because a lot of really good work has been done by really good people. So I'm just going to touch on what hasn't been done in terms of how it kind of goes with our priorities. And when I first started, I'll mention when I first started participating in the bog and stew, I was kind of probably overly constructively critical, which, you know, I quickly realized, oh, this is a funding issue. It's not a competency issue or anything like that. So just want to be clear on that. All right, so some of the recent sampling efforts we've been doing down in Region 9, both as part of the stew and using our supplemental money, is we were the first region to volunteer to participate in the realignment work. And that is wrapping up hopefully soon, waiting for final data on that. And we thought that was a great project. We've also had a lot of focus on San Diego Bay because that's an area where we have a lot of contamination and a lot of recreational subsistence angling efforts. So we've been doing oyster work for San Diego Bay, looking at basically wild non-native oysters there, and then also doing some lobster work in San Diego Bay, which I'll touch on a little bit more. And then Carrie and Debbie of my staff, Carrie's our lead for HABs, and Debbie's basically the second in command. So they've been doing a lot of cyanotoxin sampling in lakes, streams, and also places like in the lower right picture here, which is kind of the stream estuarine interface, and basically concerned about how these HABs are getting into the ecosystem and also potentially tissues. Okay, so for priorities for sites, so stew, in my mind, has targeted sites of importance, but there are definitely gaps within our region that are relatively understandable, and I'll touch on those. We have a lot of small public ponds that are around the region. These are basically not big enough to show up in the lakes and reservoirs type of strata for stew, but they are important, especially for kind of local neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods too. For our region, we usually don't get sampled as part of the rivers and creeks or rivers and streams part of stew. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's kind of odd, but one is our rivers and streams are kind of small comparison to statewide. The second reason is we have endangered steelhead, and there is a blanket CDFW regulation that basically says if a water body is open to anadromous steelhead down here, it's illegal to fish in it. But guess what? Everybody fishes in them anyways. So it's kind of this kind of catch-22 situation, which is odd. And then we got a lot of interest in like if we have large water bodies that are generally sampled by stew, there's interest in kind of discrete locations and how things look like a specific pier within a large water body like San Diego Bay. And then one of our priorities, our big priorities coming out of the realignment, is to basically get to the sites that were identified as a priority by tribal or subsistence groups, but were unsampled because we simply just didn't have enough funds. So moving on to species for our priorities, I would say that stew is sometimes pretty well aligned for species that are targeted for consumption. But many of important species go unsampled, and it's really a funding issue. So in my view, stew is presently really a fish-only program on a statewide basis, which is understandable because of the funds. And there really is a difficult balance that I realize is there, because part of it is answering the question of, of having comparability. between sites and then also trends. So are things getting better or worse? But from our view for species priorities, there's a lot of species in our region that don't get sampled. One of the examples here is California spiny lobster, which we sampled in San Diego Bay. And just some stats on this for you for non-commercial catch, 140 to 200,000 annually, representing in pounds. And I hate to use market price as a value for recreational subsistence tribal use, but 25 bucks a pound, you're talking 2 to 300,000 pounds annually for non-commercial. It's a lot of money that this represents. And it's a very popular consumption species. And then there's even some numbers for lobster for, say, San Diego Bay, which is, one of the reasons we had a priority for that. 10% of the catch, so, or 12% here from 2022, 2023. So you're looking at, quite a few lobsters coming out of there, probably market value of 600 or 700K annually. And you're talking tens of thousands of lobsters coming out. So we prioritize this species. We also hear a lot from folks. They're interested when we're out doing field work. They're interested in other inverts, for example, mussels, oysters, clams like pismo clams. It's funny, even though we're in San Diego and it's illegal to take abalone, we get questions from people like saying, "Hey, if I'm in Northern California, are there results for the abalone up there?" I'm like, "I think so. I think anybody sampled them." Crabs, urchins. So there is a lot of interest and a lot of consumption of a lot of the invert species. Before we did the lobster work, I did digging to see if anybody had done lobsters, and the only thing I could find was EPA had run, I think, 3 up at Palos Verdes for DDT. That was it. So it definitely is a gap. We don't have Dungeness crab up here, but I know that's a huge fishery up north. We get questions about that all the time. I don't really see if those are sampled, so those might be a priority for other regions. I don't know. On the fish side of things, we get a lot of questions about other fish that aren't regularly sampled. On the freshwater side, people ask about crappie all the time. That's popular. Striped bass, some of the alternative catfish species, like people target the larger blues and flathead catfish. On the ocean side, things like bonita, barracuda, sheephead, yellowtail, that kind of stuff. So we definitely have a lot of additional species that are specifically targeted that we're interested in as a priority. So the other thing is for us for priorities are alternative preparation methods. And again, this isn't a criticism, but stew is really a skin off fillet program in our view, which is fine, but we know that other people use other methods. So we have a concern, to have data out there and potentially advisories that show what things would be like if people prefer to, consume skin on fillets or whole or things like that. And so that's one of our priorities moving forward. And that really came out of the realignment for us is the importance of considering other methods, because if people look at this, the advisories, they may view these, even though it says skin off fillet, they may view these as, oh, well, it's probably about the same. So for other methods, so it's a concern. So when we talk about pollutants, our view is that stew should be more proactive instead of reactive on what pollutants we're targeting. And I know this is a big funding issue because doing this analysis is expensive. And I'm going to stick with lobsters. I have a lobster bias. I would readily admit it. But I worked with California Sea Grant to run some spiny lobsters in San Diego Bay for PFAS. And we basically found that if you compare them to we compared them to a bunch of different state screening levels and found that for lobster organs, that the screening levels were exceeded for adults, and for children, the levels were high and exceeded screening levels for the organs and the tail muscle. So our concern is that, when we're reactive, then we have, instead of proactive, is we have advisories that potentially are underprotective. And so that's a big concern for us. And I've been looking at a lot of the PFAS stuff lately. And, for example, Wisconsin back in 2019 did a statewide PFAS survey for their water bodies. So I think we should be catching up on some of that and take a different position.
Chad, are the data for the lobster PFAS accessible? Or
Yeah,
what kind of levels did you see, if you could say quickly?
I don't remember the levels off the
All right.
top of my head. I'd have to look. The data, so the data is accessible. It's Cal Sea Grant data. They didn't have the capability of getting that into seed or anything like that, but I'm happy to share it, and we published it. So
And I'll share a link to the publication in the notes or in your template.
thank you.
Thanks.
So we're also really interested in HABs, both on the freshwater side and the marine side. One of the things that I've been interested in is trying to, and it's kind of been on my to-do list, is trying to better coordinate with California Department of Public Health, because there are Fish and Game and other volunteers and agencies they actively go out and test species that people are consuming, and mostly for HABs to see if they should be closing recreational fishing. So things like pismo clams, even lobsters down here for like domoic acid. So to me, it's kind of seems like a no-brainer. If people are collecting these for HABs, why not also use those? And then we know they're important for consumption. Why not also coordinate and use some of that to run for other pollutants? And then on the other side, on the freshwater side of things, we're really interested in FHAB pollutants, especially for freshwater in the reservoirs, because we've primarily just been focusing on doing things like grab sampling and spat, which is great, but we don't know what the impact is on tissues at this point. And we're especially interested in estuarine waters. We did find cyanotoxins in places like San Diego Bay, Mission Bay, and so those are active areas for shellfish. And so getting more information on that is a priority for us. And then last is for us, I'm happy to discuss priorities. Obviously, we're not driving the stew boat, but we're happy to help any way we can. Our own plans are to use discretionary funding when we can get it, to add to the existing contract to supplement work that Stu's doing, or add work on that we'll do and have analyzed. Our biggest next step for us is to target the missed realignment sites and species and methods, preparation methods that we weren't able to fund. And then really we want to start exploring HABs, especially in some of the areas like the small ponds that are important for neighborhoods where people are fishing, in addition to water contact, and also at the estuarine areas where there's a lot of consumptive use. And that is all I have.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks, Chad. Anything to add, other Region 9 folks? Or any questions for Chad before we move on to Emily? Region 4? All right.
I'll just say, I don't remember your constructive criticism in the early days, Chad, so I'm sure it was totally fine.
Good to hear.
That's great. Thanks, Chad. Okay, Emily, take it away. However you want to do that. It's totally up to you.
Cool. Okay, I just have my template to share.
Great.
This should be. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, cool. So just a little bit of Region 4 information, contact information. I'm the swamp coordinator and the STU representative and the FHAB coordinator. So that's what you see in this table. And then we have a tribal coordinator. Her name's Susanna Lagudas. But I should have a little asterisk here for her. She's also our public participation specialist. So that's actually her primary role. She is involved in some of our outreach and tribal coordination, but she is not technical. And then we do have technical staff for basin planning. We have Stefani Darianto. And so the three of us have met with Anna, and we've talked about this program previously. And so just some of who we are currently. So if folks were in the last Swamp Roundtable, I had a presentation about the subsistence fishing survey that we're going to start in January in our region. And similar to what Chad was mentioning about small ponds and other water bodies, we have a knowledge and data gap for many of the small water bodies in our region. And so I can actually, after this meeting, send Anna, I believe I owe you that PDF of the survey. I'll send that to Anna because I know there was a lot of interest in that from the Swamp Roundtable. So I can share that, but the target was to get to 4 to 5 water bodies from January through summer. I can't remember the exact end date month right off the top of my head, and then do revisits on different days of the week, right? So they'll capture each water body on like a Tuesday and a Sunday or a Thursday and a Saturday. So they're capturing different populations on different days of the week. And that's also based on an initial survey. So we're working with Squirp. So Alvina Mahento and her team have staff that are going out to these water bodies, and they did an initial survey of several, 10 to 15 freshwater lakes in our region to try and get an idea of where we should then focus our efforts. So that's some of what's going on that could fit into this stew and bioaccumulation. We do have an opportunity to potentially archive samples from that effort, but I'm not gonna, that's something that's up in the air. So there's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces. But what we're also starting soon, we've been planning in 2023, and we will start sampling. I'm working with Jamie Smith at Squirp, and we'll be focusing on our coastal kind of FHAB and marine HAB confluence locations. And if you would like a list of those locations, I can provide that as well. But we're looking at, Ventura Harbor, for example, LA River mouth, Cabrillo, kind of those locations where we could have maybe a domoic acid event and a cyanotoxin event. And that is also being leveraged with the bite monitoring program. So we will have shellfish monitoring. And when Chad mentioned CDPH for some of this monitoring and toxin monitoring, that kind of a little light bulb went off in my head as well about thinking about coordinating or improving coordinating maybe with other agencies that are also looking at toxins in shellfish. So that effort will continue in the next couple fiscal years. Let's see, some regional priorities. So I personally don't work on the triennial review, but talking with my supervisor and other staff in the office, these are our current priorities. So we're updating the freshwater ammonia objectives based on USC EPA criteria. We're also working on updating freshwater copper objectives based on EPA, and then designating water bodies with tribal beneficial uses. And our next triennial review is planned for 2026. And then as far as the tribal beneficial use amendment process, so currently we're on step 2, gathering information for designations, which is also why we're doing the survey. And then let's see. Moving on from tribal beneficial uses, we have total maximum TMDLs. Our region has a boatload of them. Just as an overview, we're currently working on the Los Cerritos Channel and Estuary, Alamitos Bay, Colorado Lagoon indicator bacteria. So basically bacteria TMDLs are either being reconsidered or worked on. And then we also have a reconsideration of the harbor toxics TMDL. And then upcoming planned is the reconsideration of the Marina del Rey harbor toxics TMDL. So we've got that going on in the TMDL world. Yeah,
Is
go
there a
ahead.
bioaccumulation component to the Harvard Toxics TMDL?
That is a good question. Let me let me talk to Lone about that.
Sure. Thanks.
Just because that's her, I don't know if Fan Lone is somebody you've interacted with before, but she's our staff person in charge of that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll chat with her. I know SQOs are involved, but I don't know beyond, SQOs. I just included my swamp monitoring vision for what it's worth. And then in terms of like future work, I would like to start prioritizing supporting more bioaccumulation monitoring. I think we're kind of doing it in an ad hoc fashion currently and through, various programmatic needs, right? Like tribal beneficial uses, we're doing the survey, FHABs, we're doing the coastal monitoring. But I think I'd like to be more strategic in that my goal is to really use a lot of the information that we can gather from our current survey that we're about to embark on and to then support needs around that survey and use that as like our template moving forward. I think that our region would really benefit from that. And then generally, I mean, I totally agree about we need to with Chad about PFAS. I think just in discussions with other staff like 303D list staff and TMDL staff, we still have issues with legacy contaminants for DDT, PCB, mercury. If we had a wish list, we'd like to be able to provide OEHA with more funds so we can help update fish advisories. Obviously, the consumption is a huge issue, which is part of the survey as well. How much are people eating? Are they eating fillets, the entire fish? I mean, we have a lot of questions. These water bodies are on the 303D list for PCBs, DDTs, things like that. Can they be delisted? Do they need to stay on the list? Those are some of the things that folks are interested in our office. It's not anything new, obviously, PCBs and DDT, but perhaps improving if the data is old, can we get better data? Can we get newer information? And then I think sticking points. So actually, in talking with Stefani and Susanna, a lot of the issues that we do have in terms of tribal engagement, it's hard to, I guess, maybe figure out a way to improve communication or improve funding for tribes to feel enabled to come to the table. And I think that they are overwhelmed with maybe the outreach and the amount of items that are being sent their way. And we don't have many points of contact to engage with. But I know Susanna, a lot of the feedback that she's received from those that she has talked to is that they just don't have the bandwidth or the resources. And so it's a big hurdle if we're trying to designate use and then understand how tribes may or may not use various water bodies. And yeah, that's a big sticking point. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I could take questions. Is it okay if I stop sharing?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
that was super, super helpful. Thanks for walking us through that and taking the time to coordinate and fill that out. I know it's a lot.
It's been really helpful. I like to know and learn more about what else is going on in the office. I find it really easy for folks to work in their little silos.
Yeah.
And so I hope that, I can continue to have more discussions with people in my office because it's important for us to understand what's going on and how we all can support each other and work together, even just in our own office. let alone within the stew, right?
Right.
There's like both things are true.
Yeah, both and situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions for Emily? Okay, great. And yeah, again, so, you know, there's going to be other meetings where we're going to be kind of diving deeper into all this and synthesizing things and discussing and things like that. So, yeah, this is super great. Thanks, Emily. Kelly and Lori, are you ready to take we're running way early. So, yeah. How you feeling?
I think we're ready. Kelly actually just texted me and said that her computer was having an issue and she had to restart.
Of course it is.
Of course, you know, and then I think Dan is joining us too we're kind of tag teaming our presentation and running through our template. We did not prepare additional slides, but here I will share our template.
The template is perfect. That's why I created it, so you wouldn't have to.
Thank you.
Additional slides. That's all I wanted. You're doing great.
Okay.
Perfect.
That down and okay. Let's see. I'm guessing if we're not hearing from Kelly, that means her computer is still having some challenges and is rebooting. So, can you guys see my screen? Is it a good size to read?
It works for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kelly's back.
Oh, is she back? Okay. Let's just maybe give it a minute here.
Hi, sorry, I got kicked off.
Yeah. I was just telling them that you were in the midst of rebooting.
Oh, yeah.
Of
course.
Of course. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Hi, guys. Yeah, we're excited to go through this template. It was a really good exercise for us. There'll be 3 of us presenting today. And as we discussed, or I brought up in other meetings, Lori Scribe will start to take over a lot of the coordinator program management duties. So she'll be presenting today, as long as Dan Sussman, who is my supervisor. And he is the senior of the planning and assessment unit, which includes the SWAMP program, TMDL, integrated report, and basic planning. So we all work pretty closely together. Lori is also our STU representative. We have also an FHAB coordinator who's in a different unit, Sabrina Rice. So we haven't worked super closely with her, but we're interested in including her in more of our discussions. We do have a tribal coordinator who's also in the planning assessment, Danny McClure. And then I'll also be involved and as a co-coordinator right now. So, and just going through this process, we have, you know, our big thing that we figured out is we don't know where a lot of the consumption is happening in our region. So that's our huge question and kind of holding us back from moving forward in a lot of ways. And we would like to answer this question and be given tools to help us answer this question, or in order to be more intentional and strategic in our monitoring in the future. And we're hoping we'll be able to also foster some better relationships with California Department of Fish and Wildlife and other fishing, like the health department and other people interested in this question as well. And if we are able to answer this question, we will be able to fill in these data gaps, and we're hoping to be represented a little bit better in the statewide surveys, because we will know what questions to be asking. So, historically, there's been a lot of emphasis on large sports fish, which makes sense, but that's not a huge in our region, and also the coastal, obviously. So we kind of haven't been involved in a lot of the statewide surveys for good reasons, but we feel like perhaps if we have a better understanding of the fish going on in our region, we will be able to ask those questions better and perhaps be more represented in a lot of ways. So recently we did do a 2-year study in the Upper Owens River watershed, and we did a mercury investigation there. And this was a follow-up on several listings that we had in the area. And so we did fish, water, and sediment sampling in Lake Crowley and several tributaries to the lake. We're still currently doing like some data analyzation and working with our enforcement unit how to move forward with that. So that was a pretty large study, and probably the largest like fish tissue study we've done on our own regionally. And from there we use our regional swamp funds and supplemented that with discretionary contract funds. So we're looking forward to I think Dan might touch a little bit where we are on that project, but looking forward to wrapping that up. And then before that, all of any work that we've done with any fish tissue has been follow up to statewide surveys in areas that there were concerns. And so when we had extra money, which wasn't often, we would use that to supplement additional fish tissue sampling with the intent of creating fish consumption advisories. So currently we have around 12 advisories for our region, and a handful more sitting in the queue waiting to be looked at by OEHA. So that's pretty much the extent of our bioaccumulation monitoring in our region. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dan. And like I said, he's our senior for the planning and assessment unit. So he has uses our data to kind of move forward with projects. And thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Appreciate all of that. Yeah, the Upper Owens I'll talk about in a little bit. But our triennial review priorities, our big ones that I wanted to highlight here, that this past triennial review, we just kind of lumped a bunch in as high priority as opposed to putting numbers to them. But these numbers 1, 2, and 3 sort of follow where we are, where we've been putting our resources. And the one on here that's, I guess most relevant here is the tribal beneficial uses and subsistence beneficial use designations. We've been working on a designation project in the Mono Basin. Mono Lake, of course, has no fish, but the tributaries do. And one of our challenges there is just for any of you that have been following these projects, is the level of evidence to justify the designation of the tribal subsistence beneficial use. But we are following up from this project, which we're hoping to take to our board maybe in August, with conversations with other tribes that we've already started and really get what their priorities are. And we'll talk a little bit more about the types of questions that we would need to support our tribal subsistence designations if we go down that path at the same time as we go with the cultural. But also, I don't want to lose track of the non-tribal subsistence beneficial use and really like the type of information that we would need to gather and prioritize for that down the road. The other one on here that has a little bit of a connection is our total nitrogen water quality objective in Hot Creek. And I just mentioned that because that is associated with a location of one of the CDFW fish hatcheries in our region. And that is basically supplied with spring water and then connects to Hot Creek, which is in the Crowley Lake Upper Owens watershed. So Mammoth Creek, which we're waiting for an advisory on, basically becomes Hot Creek, just downstream or just upstream, right by that hatchery. Yeah, let's scroll down a little bit. So I've talked a bit about that, where we are with tribal beneficial uses. We actually had a great meeting last week with a lot of the Owens Valley tribes, a listening session with them and sort of introduction, where we traveled down to Bishop and talk to them a bit about what a beneficial use designation actually means and really the difference between the consumption component of the coal use and the level of consumption of T-sub, which we're hoping to get some more clarification on that from the Office of Chief Counsel with the memo coming out maybe in January. Right now, our only marker of what subsistence is associated with the non-tribal subsistence, and some notes in the Mercury provisions there about how many meals that is supposed to associate with, or is supposed to, mean per week. Which is, I think, 4 or 5 meals a week at 1/3 of a pound meal. So a little bit different than some of the coastal and north coastal sort of salmon focused tribes. Let's see, let's go down to our TMDL. So lately we haven't been doing formal TMDLs. We've been doing 9-element watershed plans, sort of TMDL, used to be called TMDL alternatives. Now we're calling them advanced restoration plans. And both neither Bishop nor West Fort Carson really have a lot of issues that we know of with bioaccumulants. And so we haven't really focused on fish in there. The Truckee River sediment TMDL, I'll touch on real briefly just because it was adopted before there was even a listing policy at the US, or excuse me, it was put on the list, 303D list, before we had a listing policy. And we did a revisitation of it, a 10-year, and what we're trying to determine is really like, okay, do we have the right target for sediment, and also is the beneficial use actually being impaired? And so we've been talking with CDFW and the major stakeholder in the area, and they're going to be doing some population surveys, hopefully at the end of this next summer, to just get what the fish population dynamics are, and with that some of the they have associated like fishermen surveys. I don't know that, I guess I hadn't thought about before this meeting if there's an opportunity to coordinate with that on any, taking a fish and bioaccumulation studies on that. But the Upper Owens River watershed is basically from the headwaters down to Crowley Lake. And as Kelly mentioned, Crowley Lake is a reservoir and LADWP system. And in our 2018 integrated report, we put it on the 303D list for mercury. And we put it on there for 2 different of the mercury of the beneficial uses. And it caused us to ask the question about where's this mercury coming from? And so, we the team designed the study. There's a lot of old mining areas in the Eastern Sierra. You look at a map of dots of mineral sites, and it's blanketed. And Crowley Lake itself is actually a really popular sport fishery destination on the east side for folks that are coming up from Southern California, folks that live on the east side, etc. And so as part of that 2-year study, basically it focused on finding mercury, but there was also testing for arsenic. And what we found was that this old stamp mill site in Mammoth was the primary source of mercury to that system. Coincidentally, our enforcement folks had been looking just there as well. And so our hope with that is to, from the TMDL program, be able to do what's called a 4B, where we make the argument to US EPA that we don't need to do that basically the problem is being addressed by another regulatory action other than a TMDL, and that our enforcement folks can put a cleanup and abatement order together for the Forest Service, which coincidentally is also very concerned with this site and has been pursuing for, I don't know, about 2/3, 3/4 of the site action against the bank, which has, is the 100 years ago or whatever, when the mill was happening, that business went out of business. But the successor business is a bank still in business. So hoping for that to happen this year. And I'm really excited that there's one source for that's pretty clear. But there's basically a lot of waters downstream of that have these mercury issues. And I guess one of my questions with Mammoth Creek, since we've sampled and are waiting for an advisory on that, is that a place that's fished but for consumption, and at what level? So thanks for listening to me. I'll pass it on.
All right, thanks, Dan, for giving us the recap on trainal review and TMDL. We did, as part of this, we did not have a bioaccumulation vision for our program, so we created one. Y'all can read it later. I think I can spare you the reading of it. But I would mention also that we have goals for our region. And so I added here our regional goals. These are not swamp specific. This is our Region 6 Water Board goals, protecting human health and aquatic life, improving aquatic resources and water quality, safe work environment, providing good customer service, and incorporating racial equity into our water quality decisions and regulatory actions. There's definitely, a racial equity nexus to the bioaccumulation program, and we are in the process of developing our racial equity resolution right now. We're a bit behind the curve of other regions. We postponed developing a resolution right away to work on some more internal work to recreate sort of trust and communication and improve those things before we delved into racial equity discussions. Let's see. So those are our regional goals. Here's a little look at our future bioaccumulation monitoring. As Kelly mentioned, we have used discretionary contract funds to augment our bioaccumulation program in the past, and we foresee continuing that trend given the lack of any STU budget increases or swamp budget increases, both of which we all know are suffering and should be brought up to maybe more modern standards of funding. So we're hoping that we could maybe use some discretional contract dollars to either support additional lake surveys or work towards creating some sort of consumption fishing and consumption surveys for our region. That is definitely one of our big data gaps. Kind of looking further forward, there's potential follow-up sampling from the lakes that are being surveyed this year. And then we added realignment cycle 4 to our potential, future work here. We thought that 28, 29, although it seems like a long ways out, could be where we are in between integrated report cycles, and that might be a good time for us to be able to dedicate resources to that process. So it's a long way out, Anna, but you can put us down as a potential candidate for that cycle. Some long-term priorities that are not exactly monitoring related, and I think this has come up for others as well, but better communication engagement with county health organizations, and then ensuring that all of our existing consumption advisories are actually, physically posted at the locations where they need to be. That's something that we have not put a lot of resources into recently. We did in the past. And so that's something that we're hoping to do more of, and just kind of, so much work goes into these advisories. We want to make sure that the information is actually getting out to people for the advisories we do have. And now running into our wish list here. We could work on our formatting of this section a little bit. Let me just say that we will be tweaking on our template a tad, but better information really on where fish consumption and subsistence fishing is occurring and what species are being eaten. we're kind of taking a broad sort of thought on subsistence in that way. It may be areas where we just have higher rates of consumption, or determining if we have certain populations or communities that have much higher rates of consumption. So that's something that we're really looking at. And then, identification of communities that regularly rely on fishing, and organizations that work with those communities as a way to try and learn more, and maybe be able to focus our surveys better, or create, additional surveys. I made a note today of something to add maybe on this is, what parts of the fish or people are consuming. Kind of hearing this from other regions, right? That it's not just the fillets. And so diving in more so that we can use our limited budget and our limited resources to, really get the most bang for the buck, where we are gonna, be able to help protect human health and, with our limited resources. So, other sort of wish list, following up on statewide screenings and the most recent data. We kind of visioned a lofty goal of maybe collecting screening samples from all of our major unsampled lakes and reservoirs that have public fishing access in our region. And that's kind of a long range. If we had unlimited money and funding and staff and resources, we would love to be able to do that. We do have a lot of, we are limited, in our permanent population in our region. We do have a huge industry of people traveling for recreational fishing and camping. And so we do have a lot of fishing occurring in our region, and likely a lot of, recreational consumption occurring. Let's see, I don't want to leave off here. Better coordination with CDFW and county health. I mentioned county health earlier, but CDFW also, we would like to, leverage their knowledge too about where fishing is occurring and where consumption is occurring. Sticking points. A lot of this has come up before. Lack of funding. We've been relying a lot on discretionary contract dollars, and some swamp supplemental funding, lack of information for us about where fish are being consumed, what species. The cost of the streams and rivers surveys was shocking. We reached out to Anna earlier this fall, hey, we have some discretionary contract dollars, and boy, we don't have enough. The rivers and streams are very expensive. Yet there's a lot of rivers and streams being fished in our region. Another kind of challenge is that the amount of time it takes from sampling to an advisory actually becoming available. At this point, we're still waiting on for data that was collected in 2016. And that's challenging to track internally. It's sort of like, just feels like that process, it would be great if we could figure out how to improve the timeline on that. Keeping up with constituents of emerging concern, or even some that are maybe not emerging, but that we haven't just sampled for, and that just the lack of expertise maybe with our staff, both in fishing and in some of those contaminants, is, presents other challenges with thinking about the list of analytes to sample for. And then some of the statewide efforts have not been very inclusive of Region 6. The coastal focus, obviously, we don't have, not a coastal region. And then some of the Bass Lake sampling, is limited in our region. So, and we do have a lot of areas of really rapid development occurring in our south, and some of the areas, there are some of these smaller fishing ponds and smaller stocked ponds in the southern half in the Mojave area of our region that haven't really been on the radar too much, but looking at CDFW's fishing maps, we're realizing that there are these sort of smaller pond areas out there that I think Chad mentioned in his presentation. So, and I think one of, in terms of requests from STU or from statewide STU, figuring out how to facilitate the surveys, and how do we go about, focusing our resources and leveraging, what other regions are doing, but what the statewide, program could maybe provide in terms of consumption surveys would be great for our region.
I'm so glad I'm recording all of these because I will like come back and dive so much deeper. Just quick question for the CECs, do you have any top of mind that are like standing out for y'all, or is this just like a blanket, all the CECs in the land request?
Yeah, I don't think we do have too much on the top. And PFAS, obviously, I think is a growing concern, and then the HAB, the FHAB, and accumulation nexus. And
Yeah.
is there a concern? Do we know enough to know if there's a concern? Those certainly are on our radar. We actually did a short survey that we sent internally to our staff in our office to try and like leverage, fishing resources and fisher people's knowledge in our region. And a few questions came up related to arsenic and, is that a bioaccumulation concern? And but again, lacking some of the expertise to, so we have some homework to do maybe there just to find out what if there are bioaccumulation concerns around that. So.
One more thing to add to that, Lori, is just all that recent work UC Davis did about microplastics within the basin.
Yes. Oh, yes. Right. There's a lot of focus and research and funding going to microplastics in Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe Basin. And right, that's a whole nother kind of potential bioaccumulation constituent. Thank you, Elena.
Great ad. Anything else, Kelly or Dan, that you want to circle back or highlight before we open it up to questions?
No, thanks. I just think this was a needed exercise for our region. Like we've kind of taken a backseat just because we just staffing wise have been more limited and like it's coastal time. So we just kind of check out a little bit, but we appreciate like the re-engagement and like there's obviously a need in our region. So thank you.
Yeah, all very good, valid reasons. Like no judgments here. Thanks for re-engaging. Great. Any questions for the Region 6 Dream Team? Lauren.
Hey, sorry if you mentioned this and I missed it, but I was curious when your data for the Upper Owens River watershed mercury investigation fish tissue data might be available.
I think our fish tissue data is available
Yes,
now.
all of that data is available. And I believe, Autumn, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lori should have access to that, correct? If Autumn's on.
I don't know if it's in Seedon yet. I'm not sure. And Lori, is that where do you wait until it's in Seedon?
For our advisories, yes.
Yeah.
We typically do.
It's all like with Swamp IQ right now, but I am not 100% sure if it's been pushed through Seedon, and we can get back to you about that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. I think Lake Crowley is kind of higher on our list for advisories to do maybe next year.
Great, that's wonderful.
I'll check the data checker today and just see kind of where we are in the queue with that and what we're waiting for still.
Yeah, interestingly, I know from staff taking a cursory look at that data, when we listed Crowley, we listed it for the wild beneficial use, I think, which looks at prey fish a lot, and then also the sport fishing use, because the few fish we had there of the size in the calm beneficial use, which includes sport fishing, those fish showed numbers that would prompt us to list, but we didn't have the actual number of fish needed for minimum data number, and so we relied upon the weight of evidence approach for our 303D listing in 2018 for that particular beneficial use listing. And it's been a while, but one of the team was saying that a lot of the fish that now that we have enough data, that might support pulling that calm listing off. But we'll see when we're going through our our decisions, later this year for the integrated report. We're on cycle right now.
And then Autumn, I saw you unmuted at some point. Did you have something you wanted to add or update us on?
Oh, no, I was just gonna answer Elena's question, but it was covered.
Okay, great. Awesome. Anything else?
Also just real quick, I wrote down your list of water bodies that you are waiting on advisories for. Noted. We've had these conversations with Region 6 before, although I don't think it was any of you, and it's been several years.
Maybe Mary, did that sound?
Yes, that
Okay.
sounds right. Yes, yes. I'm happy to talk offline too about kind of where we're at with the data and what we might need. There's a couple of those water bodies that are on our list, but they're not high on the list. And like I said, we can talk about that offline. If you have questions about why you're still waiting on those, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, can we assume that they're not high priorities because the numbers are not crazy?
Yeah, last summer we kind of presented on how we prioritize water bodies and what metrics we use. And we have a document on our website that kind of goes through that whole process if you're curious about it. But yeah, we do have some Region 6 ones that are lower on the priority, just statewide. Happy to discuss why, but we do have a couple Region 6 ones that are in the queue coming up in the next, year. Oh, yep, I see Wes just put our fish advisory prioritization process report on the chat, so you guys can read about it there. Thanks, Wes.
Oh, we have a dream team at work.
Just while we were
Thanks,
talking,
Lauren.
I have one quick thing. This is off topic, but we had just got the fish advisory for South Lake. And the link to the press release is actually not working. And I was working on updating our website with the recent press release. So I put in a request, but I never heard back from anyone. So I just why all the ears are on the phone. I don't know who to contact on that.
That's in process. We're
Okay.
well
Thank you.
aware of that and just working through a few things, but that should be out soon.
Okay, no problem. I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I love it. Stewing. Jennifer, yeah. You had your hand up?
Jennifer,
You're on
you are
mute,
muted.
Jennifer.
I suspect. Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So when I'm checking files right now, my computer with Acrobat is crashing every moment. So I had to go into the Zoom meeting through my phone.
Sure.
So the functionality is not really that great. But so if we were speaking about the RWB6 _UORW_21 project code, those ones have all been loaded. They were all, the loading finished in August.
So that means they should be in CDN already.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that update.
Thanks for
Okay.
confirming that.
Yeah.
But
So
was
yeah,
there
everything, I don't
2022
have anything in Region 6, since I was like, okay, I don't have anything in Region 6.
Was there 2022 data too, though?
Well, for fish tissue, it should have only been 21.
Yeah, this is just the fish tissue. I am just speaking on the fish tissue.
We just perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thanks,
Hey.
y'all.
Hey, Hannah, I have a thought, prompted by the interesting information about Crowley Lake, and sounds like an interesting study. Topics like that, I think, would be great to hear about at our STU meetings, like maybe a short summary of that project, and we could compare notes across regions on projects like that. So if the regions are willing to do things like that, I think it would be great information sharing.
Yeah. We usually have room for guest speakers and things like that. So when you all are feeling ready to share, that's definitely a place that we would welcome that.
Awesome.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Huge thanks to all of our presenters today. The turnaround time, I'm sure, felt rushed from the template to presenting and things like that. And just, I'm so appreciative of you and your teams completing the template as thoroughly as you have, and being the first ones to present. It's always kind of, you know, a bit brave to be the first ones at the table. So thanks so much. And like I said, I'm so glad I'm recording this so that I could go back. So as we wrap, I think we're really close to right on time. Just a reminder, we heard from 3 amazing regions, but there are 6 more, and we're also hearing from the State Board's Division of Water Quality, and particularly the team that generates the integrated report and water quality assessments. Yeah, Wes.
And I don't know if this is the right time, but I just wanted to say that these are really useful presentations for us. And we're loud and clear hearing about PFAS, alternate fish preparation, tribal subsistence use, and the more we collaborate and interact, I think it really fosters for getting stuff done.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Wes.
I'll sort of continue on that, in that vein, that it's really great to see all the the regions so far really putting thought into their bioaccumulation monitoring needs. I think it's been a while since we've gotten input like this, and it's super valuable. And of course, we'll do everything we can to address these information needs. But it's vital to the program and keeping it thriving.
Thanks, Jay. Dan?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that the 2 meetings that you're showing will be recorded. We have big region-wide conflict on the 24th and another for supervisors on the 31st, and the discussion from DWQ, especially since that's the IR team.
Yeah.
Definitely want to be able to view that. I'm sorry that we won't be able to participate and ask questions, but
No worries. Yeah, the presentations I think will be, well, to answer your question, all of our meetings are recorded and posted on our website, so you'll absolutely be able to jump back. And I try and get the recordings up before the notes, so because that's a little bit easier. So yes, you'll be able to jump back and view them. And these are just the presentations, right? We're still going to have to discuss as the full stew about priorities and what the recommendations are after we hear from everyone, including our other agency partners like OEHA, our tribal government partners, and any community-based organizations that want to share their priorities in a format that works for them. So we'll finish hearing from the state and regional water boards in January in terms of their sharing presentations. We'll start to hear from our non-water boards partners at the end of January, January 31st, and in February. And then March and April, I'm gonna be synthesizing my booty off and trying to get something for us where we can really talk about big picture priorities, and then, you know, to detailed monitoring plans and lists for next year, for 2025. And then we will start to implement those. Yeah, Dan.
yeah, I was just wondering, for the January 31st, that's when you'll have other folks, and I'm curious what your avenue for reaching out to tribes and other organizations are. Are you doing that yourself? Are you relying on us as the regions? How can we help you engage with, folks that might want to talk from our region?
Yeah, so I've sent an email out to our Tribal Matters email list. And for tribes that I've already in connection with, I'm reaching out to them individually. But if you have tribal partners that you know are interested in bioaccumulation, if you're not already on the safety work group list, like as soon as you get an email and you have an established relationship with folks, and it's culturally acceptable to just forward and say, hey, wanted to flag this for you. That's great. I'm not asking regions to do their own formal tribal coordination effort just because you're all busy doing that for tribe beneficial uses and other things. But if you already have a relationship with folks and you want to flag it for them, that would be greatly appreciated. And the other thing to flag, I've kind of talked about this before, but the tribe agency and community-based organization presentations, there's a template there for their use, and if it's a valuable resource. But if they just want to pop in for 5 minutes and say a couple things and then leave, or share slides and speak for longer than that, that's all welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So this is a reminder, if you are reaching out to your tribal agency and community-based organization partners and you want to flag this opportunity for them, just have them reach out to me by the 1st of January or the first week of January to let me know that they're interested, so I can get them on the agenda. They don't have to have anything completed by then. And then if, you know, that feels too soon, I feel like it's tomorrow, but they still want to provide feedback. There's this survey that they can complete to share information that they want to share with us. You all, that I'm looking at your boxes right now, you all know that you need to register for meetings, but if you're watching this recording, there's a link to our meetings page where you can register for our Zoom meetings and get those calendar invites on your agendas. I will be posting the meeting materials, including the slides that were shared today and the templates that were shared today. So I heard a couple of you mention you wanted to update your template. I'm just going to share what you've already sent to me. Feel free to update. And then in the main document that we share with everyone's things, that's where I'll share your updated version, so that you don't have to worry about updating over the next couple of days or weeks. And with that, again, I know it's a busy time of year, personally and professionally for a lot of us. So thank you so much for spending this time with us today, and happy holidays, happy new year. And I'm looking forward to seeing y'all in January.
Thanks, Anna.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays.